Hello, welcome back to another video. What are we going to talk about today? So a while ago I asked you guys to ask me anything. I figured I would maybe do a Q&A session one time, and I said that if there are at least 10 questions I'll create a video out of it, and if not, there's no video. So I kind of broke my own rule. I was like, you know what, 8 questions sufficient. 2 people asked me, that's great. More than happy, more than I could ever ask for. I'm very grateful and appreciate it very much. And I figured I'll answer all of these 8 singular questions that were asked by me by 2 people. And those are some good questions, actually, questions that I can actually talk about and discuss a little bit more in detail. So, even if it's 8 questions, I'd rather have more quality-based questions than quantity-based questions. Instead of having all these unnecessary, not relevant questions, let's say. So I think I'll start off from the top and just go all the way down. So the first question is, what are your thoughts about digitalization of society? I'm Swedish, and in my opinion, Sweden is going a little bit crazy with it. Well, to be honest, I don't really know what Sweden is exactly doing with their digitalization nowadays. I know Switzerland is also kind of heading in that direction in some ways. In September, we're going to have vote on whether or not we should implement the so-called electronic ID here in Switzerland or not. And to be honest, I still didn't really read that much into it. But if you're asking in general, what are my thoughts about digitalization of society? I think it's just one of those things where it's inevitable at this point, where technology progresses, whether you like it or not, for the good or for the bad. Although, again, in my personal opinion, I think technology is a neutral. Any advancement is neutral because it's essentially up to the people how they want to implement it. So, technology can be good if you use it for good causes, but it can also be bad if you use it for bad causes. So I think in many ways to digitalize things is definitely a huge advantage in terms of, less paperwork. For example, you don't have to always print stuff out. You don't have to use paper all the time. A lot of recycling then afterwards. The other danger here would be that, if there's ever a big technological crash, digital crash online or something like that, and you lose all of your backups, or of course you have a lot of external hardware to back your stuff up nowadays, but things like that, you cannot put all of your eggs in one basket, basically. So I think that's kind of my take on that. So the second one is, what's the hardest thing with learning Swedish? That's a good question, actually. I would probably say that one of the hardest thing is actually not so much the vocabulary, not so much, the grammar. Maybe it's a little bit tricky sometimes, but it's pretty similar to German. So, and since I speak German, I can kind of relate to the grammar a little better. But the trickiest here is definitely the pronunciation in many ways. I realized that Swedes speak, they don't like if you've ever heard Finnish, the Finns pronounce and say the words and letters exactly the way it's said. So in Finnish, probably the only advantage of learning Finnish would be that you don't have to think of how to correctly pronounce it. Pretty much in every other language is the same. Well, especially French. In French you don't say the word "e" at the end of a particular word, or there are some silent vowels, some silent letters that you have to remember not to pronounce them. And I think that's kind of the trickiest part for me in Swedish, is that you have to kind of memorize certain words in a way that you have to pronounce them. So basically, in short, I have to always kind of remember and memorize certain words the way they have to be pronounced in the right manner. So, but I think other than that, I'm not like struggling so much with Swedish either. I think it's more of a question of consistency and discipline in the end. So, all right. Third question: dog person or cat person or both? I would say both. I have a dog and a cat, two cats. So I love them equally both. I can't really prefer one or the other. I used to be more a cat person actually. And then once we got a dog, then obviously I fell in love with the dogs, and I can't say that, I prefer one or the other. So in that sense, equally. Next one from another person. Have you ever seen the film Martyrs 2008? If so, what do you make of the ending? Well, unfortunately, I can't really answer that question because I haven't seen that movie, so I can't really make of any ending in particular. So, and maybe I might add to that in general, I don't really watch too many movies or series or whatsoever. Every now and then I will turn on the TV and watch some interesting movie if I see something that could be intriguing to me. But I'm not really that kind of type of person to, sit down and actually spend hours watching something. I would rather watch like a documentary or something, more historically related, or, something of that sort. Could be geography, could be some interesting case study analysis, whatever. I mean, of course I like action movies. When I was growing up, I liked Star Wars, for example, or I liked Braveheart or The Patriot, some of these kind of war, historical, freedom movies in that sense. So yeah, with that being said, I can't really answer that. What degree are you currently pursuing? So it's called International Business Administration, and that's a bachelor degree I'm currently pursuing. The reason I chose that was because I was always, I think since I was around 13, 14, I was really interested in business and economics and geopolitics, global politics, money, all these things. So with that being said, that was the closest degree that I decided to choose. And, of course, I also had other thoughts of pursuing law at some point. I also thought very briefly pursuing a medical degree. Quickly changed my mind after a couple weeks. I think when I was like 16 or something like that, I was like, you know what, not really my thing. So yeah, moving on. Do you believe in the Holy Trinity? Yeah, I do. Yeah, I mean, I'm a Christian. I read the Bible. I would say I'm in some sense religious. I wouldn't say like I'm so crazy fanatically religious either. More moderate, but I am fairly religious, let's say. So yeah, I do. What is your view on the Heartland theory? Ooh, let me remember what that is. If I'm not mistaken, the Heartland theory is basically that this basically where Ukraine, Russia, Belarus, these territories, this is like the most fertile territory on the continent of Europe and Asia, and that it's been fought over for many centuries or something like that. I can actually search it up right now if you don't mind, because I once read that Heartland theory. All right, what does the Heartland theory explain? Heartland theory developed by Halford Mackinder. Yeah, Mackinder, exactly. Reshaped our understanding of global power dynamics. It argues that controlling the Eurasian landmass, particularly the central Heartland region, is key to world domination. All right, so I did get it right. All right, just wanted to fact check that. Yeah, I mean, what do I make of it? I mean, essentially, I feel like throughout mankind history, everyone fought over any type of land. And I mean, again, this is just a theory. And do I think it's like 100% correct? I mean, sure. I mean, if we want to go down that rabbit hole, then Ukraine is Ukraine and Belarus, and a little part of Western Russia is pretty fertile. It has one of the best soils for growing, fruits and vegetables and all of that, and just simply having it's pretty rich in minerals, resources, especially eastern part of Ukraine, basically where Russia right now is occupying. So, pretty understandable in some ways, or in many ways. And I think it is partially true, but would I take it for 100% truth? Not really, because there are many other parts of the world where a lot of territory or land is also pretty fertile and good soil and all of that. So wouldn't really take that as a singular type of truth. So the last question: what are your 5 favorite philosophical books? Pretty interesting one. Well, I have a lot, to be honest, but if I had to narrow it down, and if someone asked me my top 5 books for life, I think the first one would be from Friedrich Nietzsche, Thus Spake Zarathustra, which is something that influenced me greatly, because I wrote the first book I wrote was heavily influenced by this book. And I just found it to be very, very foundational in early 20th century, with the death of Christ, with the death of Christianity in Europe, Western Europe, and so on. So, and then the second one is The Master and Margarita. This one is a really heavy book. I'm not sure if you guys have read that. I'm pretty sure some of you have. If not, I would definitely recommend that. It's pretty heavy, really heavy to understand it. It took me a couple times to reread that book, and also had to read, online interpretations for it and try to grasp a few concepts within that book. So it's basically a dual kind of a storyline. You have the real-time story, and then you have the story, what happened 2,000 years ago when Jesus was around and things of that sort, with Pontius Pilatus, or I already forgot the name. But either ways, I read that a long time ago when I was 17 or 18. So, and then the third one I would say is The Gulag Archipelago by Alexander Solzhenitsyn. Definitely recommend that for those of you who are interested in, totalitarian philosophies, and especially communism, socialism. I feel like a lot of people still don't fully know the full background of communism, what happened in the Soviet Union. A lot of people know about fascism and Nazi Germany, all of that. But unfortunately, there are still quite a few people who still think communism is good. Well, again, there are still people who think fascism is good, but I would say way less than people than people who think that communism is good. So I definitely would recommend that. And then for me personally, on a personal side note, I would say the fourth one is The Meditations by Marcus Aurelius. Definitely helped me with, emotional regulations, stoicism, helped me incorporate that into my daily life and look at the world a little differently in some ways. And the last one is a very philosophical one, and it's based on logotherapy. This is by Viktor Frankl, called Man's Search for Meaning. Pretty interesting one. Describes how he survived concentration camps, Auschwitz, all of that sort, and how basically, being optimistic in the worst possible times helps you survive really difficult times. And this is sort of related to meditations or Marcus Aurelius, but in his own way. So yeah, I think I answered all of your questions here. Yeah, those 8 questions. So yeah, I think it was a pretty interesting Q&A session. If you guys liked it, enjoyed it, feel free to ask some more questions. I'll see if we have enough questions gathered. I can do a second segment of this Q&A series. And on that note, I hope you guys have a wonderful day, and see you in the next one.